Thank you, Sam. Today is a sad day. The Supreme Court has overturned the constitutional right to abortion established in Roe v. Wade, and I'm thankful to Congresswoman Deborah Ross, Congresswoman Kathy Manning, my dear friend Calla Hales of a Preferred Women's Health Center, and all of my colleagues on the call for taking the time out to just talk about one of the worst Supreme Court decisions in our lifetimes. First, for those of you in the state of North Carolina, let me say loudly and clearly, abortion care is still legal today in the state of North Carolina. Let me repeat that. Abortion care is still legal today in the state of North Carolina, as well as many other states. However, this ruling doesn't end with abortion. Justice Alito writes in his opinion that overturning Roe v. Wade and Casey should be used to invalidate the entire idea of a right to privacy and reconsider Obergefell, Griswold, and Lawrence. And so that means that this Supreme Court is comfortable overturning the constitutional right to marriage equality, the right to use contraceptives, and the very right for same-sex couples to have relationships. So I'm angry. I'm angry as hell today because this decision is fundamentally wrong. This decision will affect everyone, but the impact will fall hardest on those who already face barriers to care. Black and brown women, those who live in rural areas or have lower incomes and can't afford to cross state lines for care, young people and the LGBTQ people, and women in abusive relationships. These 5 justices were appointed by 2 presidents who lost the popular vote, yet they've overturned what was a 7-2 decision in 1973, a decision that 69% of Americans across the political spectrum support today, and that Americans have considered settled for half a century. The Supreme Court has now greenlit forced pregnancy, taking away freedom for pregnant people to make this intensively personal decision for themselves and give it away to politicians. Every situation and every pregnancy is different, and we should trust people. We should trust women, not politicians, to make their own decisions about their health and their lives. The court's majority has no respect for other precedents that have been won in recent decades: the right to interracial and same-sex marriage, the right of queer people to exist in public, the right to contraception, and more. House Democrats have passed bills to protect LGBTQ rights and abortion rights, as well as to end discriminatory insurance coverage bans on abortion to expand access, but all have been blocked by Republicans in the Senate. Those senators who voted no have an obligation to reconsider their decision. We clearly need not just a Democratic majority, but a clear pro-choice majority in the Senate as we do in the House. This decision doesn't change the fact that abortion is still healthcare and people will still need to access it. It's now going to be a state-by-state fight to get people the care that they need. And despite this disastrous decision, we're going to continue working in Congress for reproductive justice and equality and enshrine the bodily autonomy of women and parents in the law. We need to reform the filibuster so a Jim Crow procedure is not standing in the way of action to protect people's human rights. Let's continue to take this righteous anger to the streets and to the voting booths. We need to protect abortion providers and support patients and organizers who are working to get our neighbors the care that they need. At home in North Carolina, our governor must continue to protect access to abortion so that no one is denied the health care they need, and so we can serve as a haven for those who will come from other states. And I'm going to work with legislators and advocates to fight any proposal from the North Carolina General Assembly that uses this ruling as an opportunity to turn back the clock for women. I did it when I was in the State House, and I held this hanger up to say that's where we're going back to. That's what we don't want and should not have. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to one of my colleagues who has worked with me to protect choice since we served together in the North Carolina General Assembly, Congresswoman Deborah Ross. Deborah?
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Adams, and it is always a pleasure serving with you and fighting alongside with you because you are fierce. Everyone, thank you for joining us. And before I get to the issue at hand, I want to thank the leaders on this call today who have been champions for reproductive freedom across our state. As you know, Dr. Adams has been fighting for decades for women, and I am proud to have colleagues like her and Congresswoman Manning in Congress, especially as we face this very difficult challenge. I also want to acknowledge all of the healthcare providers who are working tirelessly every single day to provide women the care and information they need. Today, we are heartbroken, we are horrified, and we are fearful for our sisters and our daughters. But one thing we are not is defeated. The Republican-controlled Supreme Court today handed down a decision that many believed was unthinkable, immediately stripping women in our country of a sacred constitutional right we have relied on for half a century. Outrage does not even begin to describe the feelings of women across this country. This action was not only needless and careless, it also endangers the lives of millions of women. It's hard to express the severity of the situation before us, but here it is. The bottom line for North Carolina is that abortion is still legal in our state, and we are going to have to fight like hell to keep it that way. With the decision today, reproductive liberty is on the line, and it is left up to the states. And we know the battle that is brewing in North Carolina. I am so grateful to have leaders like Governor Cooper standing steadfast and blocking attempts to strip away our rights. But the lines in the General Assembly between sustaining a veto and overriding it are razor thin. Republican leaders will lose no time in working to enact abortion bans, so we have to start organizing now. We need to get mad, and we are, mobilize, and get to the polls. We're going to have to fight tooth and nail in the coming weeks and months to preserve access to abortion health care in North Carolina. And for us to withstand the inevitable attacks on women's health and a host of other freedoms, as Dr. Adams laid out, people need to get out and vote. You need to have your voice heard and show your elected officials that you will stand up for women and for our rights and freedom. Thank you all for joining us. And I pledge to you, I will never stop fighting for the people of North Carolina and this country. Now, I'd like to introduce to you a champion for women and the executive director of a preferred women's health center, Calla Hales. Calla, thank you for what you do every day.
Thank you so much. As it's been said previously, this is a really hard day for a lot of people. So I do appreciate the chance to be on this call with such wonderful leaders in our community, but also with all of you who are taking the time to come and listen to us as well. Now, today's decision was expected, but preparation can do nothing to really alleviate the pain and suffering that this decision is going to cause. We, as citizens, should all be able to make the personal decisions that impact our own lives, our health, and our futures without interference. And today, the US Supreme Court absolutely decimated that right to access abortion care in the United States with a simple swipe of a pen. And the right to decide whether or when to have a child is absolutely essential for social, economic, and racial equality, for reproductive autonomy, and for determining our own futures. Before this decision, abortion access was already dwindling. And today, even more people are going to be struggling to access healthcare that they need. Hostile states will likely try to ban abortion very soon, but please know this, and it's been said before, but I feel obligated to reiterate it. Abortion is still legal in North Carolina. Abortion clinics, abortion funds, and other support networks are still here to help patients in need. If you have an appointment, do not cancel it. If you need abortion care, please reach out to a provider immediately. And if you don't know of a provider, the National Abortion Federation keeps an ongoing list of open providers across the country. Now, while abortion might not be a healthcare decision that you personally have to consider, everyone loves someone who has had an abortion. Your support and your voice does matter in this fight, whether or not abortion is a healthcare procedure you might have to face. Today might be a very dark and painful day for a lot of people and for a lot of reasons. This is clearly not where they're going to stop. There are several rights that are already being decimated and more on the line. But we will continue to fight for a better future with personal freedoms and bodily autonomy for all. And I can assure you that we are not going anywhere as providers. We are still here, and we're not going anywhere until we damn near have to. At this point, I will give it back to Sam Spencer in case someone else has joined the call.
Thank you, Calla. And for everybody, that was Calla Hales with Preferred Women's Health Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. Next, I want to pass it over to Representative Troy Carter of Louisiana and ask Representative Carter to unmute to make his comments.
First of all, thank you all for joining us and allowing me to be with you today. Today is in fact a dark day for America. It's a day that we unfortunately will remember for a very long time, but now is the time for us to re-strengthen our efforts, to band together, to work harder, to demonstrate that we as Americans will not take this sitting down. We will continue to fight to reverse this horrible issue or to find ways to get around it, to make sure that we support reproductive freedoms and the rights of women. I will redouble my efforts and know that I stand firmly with you in this battle to send a message to the rest of the world. This is a travesty and one that we will not accept.
Thank you very much, Representative Carter. And with that, it's my honor to introduce the Congresswoman for North Carolina's 6th Congressional District, Representative Kathy Manning.
Thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. This is a dark day for all of us. This is a dark day for freedom. For 50 years, women across this country have had the right to decide whether, when, and with whom to have children. And today, because of this outrageous Supreme Court decision, women across the country will be at the mercy of extreme legislatures who will control the most intimate decisions of their lives. We passed the Women's Reproductive Health or the Women's Health Care Protection Act in the House. It is time for the Senate to do their job. I have introduced a resolution to protect the right to contraceptives because we know this is only the beginning. We know that there are already legislatures across the country who are out there trying to restrict women's right to contraceptive care. This is a question of freedom. This is a question of the right to control our own bodies. We will not give up fighting. This decision will particularly hurt people who are poor, people who do not have access to health care, people who do not have the ability to take time off of work and travel. And it is critically important that we stand together and we fight against this outrageously partisan political decision by the Supreme Court.
Thank you very much, Representative Manning. And with that, we can take 2, maybe 3 questions really quick. So if you are with a news outlet, please raise your hand and we will try and get you ASAP. Otherwise, we will cut short here because all the representatives have places to be really quickly. So I'm going to go to Curtis.
To mute and Representative.
Hey, this is actually Chloe with WCNC. I'm just logged in under Curtis's name, but I had a question for Calla. Since you're, helping out at a clinic here in the Charlotte area, are you all expecting there maybe to be some increased demand, people traveling from other states where there are some more restrictive laws and maybe overwhelming all of you here?
I would be remiss if I said that wasn't a possibility. I've seen probably the same numbers you have about the possibility of 70,000 people being forced to go out of state for abortion care. However, I think that it would be absolutely silly of anyone to not recognize the fact that it is absolutely impossible for every single one of those people to be able to navigate the massive barriers that have just been thrown in their way. This was already healthcare that was difficult to access between trap laws and the fact that there are not that many providers anymore. Traveling out of state, the logistics involved in that, the sheer amount of money and time involved. And as I mentioned, the lack of different providers and access is going to force people to carry unwanted pregnancies to term. Not everyone is going to be able to receive abortion care, even if they want it. It is possible that we will see an increase in state. I'm not sure if it's going to be the full amount of folks that are going to be displaced, but I do expect some level of increase.
Hi there, this is Ruben from Spectrum News. Hope you all are doing well. We saw states like New York put in place legal protections for abortion providers and patients. What role do you think the North Carolina state legislature, or the state in general, needs to do going forward?
Well, Ruben, this is Deborah Ross. I think that the state legislature could do a whole lot more to protect women's rights and take care of their basic health care. But as we've seen, this legislature has very little interest in doing this. I mean, they haven't even been able to get Medicaid expansion, which would help women who have children have health care. And so I think we're going to be much more on defense than on offense until the next election, when we may have a wonderful change and have many more members of the legislature like Dr. Adams, who lead the fight in reproductive health care. And when she and I were there, we made progress.
Yeah, you're right, Deborah. And Ruben, let me just say, I continue to say you don't change policy until you change policymakers. Now, we should change their minds if we can, and certainly we have tried over and over again in North Carolina to do that. But it's basically a sort of a mean-spirited group. I mean, I just hate to say it. I know that crowd there, and I know what we have not done that we should have done many years ago. And so this gives them an opportunity to continue the fight against women and the rights that women have to make those choices for themselves. I certainly hope that we can change their minds and that we can get something productive from the North Carolina legislature. I just certainly haven't seen it, but I'm going to be optimistic and hope that something good can come from them. Certainly, women should have the right to make the decisions. It should not be, I never understood why the government was talking about what women should do and shouldn't do with their bodies anyway, because we don't tell the men that. You shouldn't have a vasectomy, sir. I'm just personally offended by it. And as I said before, it's really going to create more death with this ruling. And we're going to see things like this. We're going to see people in back alleys, and they're not going to, you know, they won't be going to Calla. And so, you know, it's just horrible to think about the aftermath of this and what will happen. And I just regret what happened today. And as Congresswoman Ross has said, we're going to have to get out and fight. We have the ballot that we can use, and I just, you know, damn it, we better use it. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Ruben, for the last question. If any of our panelists have any final words, I'm going to let them get that in. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining us today. Congresswoman?
Thank you. Well, those were my final words. Let's get out and make, if we can't change the attitudes of our policymakers to do the right thing, then we have an opportunity to make some other changes. And certainly we can do that in November.
And I would just add this. I've worked on reproductive freedom issues for more than 30 years. And I've done that work with Democrats, Republicans, and independents. I've done it with women in urban and suburban and rural areas. We all know how important reproductive freedom is to our overall freedom. And there's going to be a mighty sisterhood in November.
And my closing comments would be, elections have consequences. Elections have consequences. So now let's make sure that we redouble our efforts, as Representative Ross and Adams have said. We're not going to take this sitting down. Let's get mad as hell. Let's use our energies wisely, and let's fight and say that we're not going to accept this, and we're going to galvanize the vote and show America what happens when Democrats come together and fight for the freedoms of women and people across our country.
Well, listen, I want to thank all of my colleagues, and Calla, thank you so much, and to all of Ruben and all of the other folks who were on, and you're going to continue to hear from us. So thank you very much, everybody, for your participation today. We appreciate it. We'll have votes shortly, I think.